Welcome back to Golden Stories, the channel where we bring you powerful tales of injustice, revenge, and redemption. Stories that grip your heart and keep you on edge. If you enjoy narratives that expose the truth and deliver justice in unforgettable ways, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe so you never miss a story. Now, tonight's story begins at a gala where the night glittered with wealth. Laughter floated through the grand hall, cameras flashing as gowns sparkled and tuxedos shone. To the world, it was a night of celebration. But outside, a storm was forming. A sleek black luxury car pulled to the curb. Its door opened slowly, and out stepped David Kareem, tall, composed, wrapped in a navy suit that whispered power. His silence was commanding, his gaze unshaken. David was no stranger to walls. He had walked into boardrooms where his worth was questioned, into meetings where his ideas were stolen, into streets where his skin alone was treated as a crime. Tonight, he carried more than his name. He carried the prayers of his father, the strength of his mother, and the lessons he whispered to his children. Stand tall, even when the world bows to hate. And yet, at the very gates of this celebration, two men decided otherwise. Mark Peters adjusted his tie, smugness plastered across his face. Stephen Clark smirked beside him, puffing his chest like a peacock. They had built their small lives on the illusion of authority, wielding power over those who could not fight back. Wrong address, pal? Mark sneered. Show me your invite, Stephen chuckled. David handed them his card. Perfect, embossed, official. Stephen looked at it, then laughed. Loud, mocking. Nice try. Not tonight. And then with venom in his voice, Stephen added, You don't belong here, mister. It wasn't about the card, it wasn't about the guest list, it was about his skin. That was racism. Raw and unmasked. The crowd outside began to whisper. Some guests smirked, delighted at the humiliation. Others looked away, too cowardly to step in. A few laughed. But David? He did not move. He did not speak. His silence unsettled them. Because it wasn't weakness they were staring at, it was the silence of a storm waiting to break. Inside the gala, word spread quickly. There's a problem at the entrance. The heavy doors swung open. Out strode Elena Whitmore, the host herself, elegance flowing with each stride. Her diamond earrings caught the light, her presence silencing the chatter. Mark straightened his posture, grinning, already rehearsing how he'd boast about keeping trouble out of such a high-class event. But then, her eyes met David's. And in that instant, the entire hall seemed to freeze. Her expression shattered from authority to awe. Gasps echoed across the guests. Without hesitation, she rushed forward, brushing Mark and Stephen aside like mere insects in her path. Mr. Kareem, she said, voice trembling yet loud enough for every witness to hear. Forgive us. We've been waiting for you. The crowd erupted in shock. Cameras flashed wildly. Mark and Stephen turned pale, their arrogance melting into raw fear as their knees nearly buckled. The same mouths that mocked David moments earlier now fell silent. Whispers rippled through the hall. Who is he? Why does the host bow to him? This was only the beginning. And on Golden Stories, you already know what comes next will leave you speechless. So if you're gripped by this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more. Elena's voice boomed across the hall like a hammer striking stone. Ladies and gentlemen, our most honored guest, billionaire philanthropist and founder of the Kareem Global Foundation, Mr. David Kareem. Applause thundered like rolling waves. Heads bowed. The same mouths that mocked him moments ago now whispered his name with reverence. And then came the blow. Elena turned sharply, her fingers slicing through the air like a sword. Mark Peters, Stephen Clark, you have disgraced this institution with your prejudice and dishonor. Effective immediately, you are dismissed. The hall gasped. Guests clutched their pearls. Dozens of phones rose into the air, recording every second. Mark and Stephen froze as security closed in, their faces flushed crimson, their arrogance stripped away. Moments later, they were dragged through the very doors they once guarded, their humiliation immortalized in 1,000 recordings that would haunt them forever. Even the staff who had stood by in silence, watching injustice unfold, were not spared. Elena's voice thundered their names as their badges were torn away. Their shame was announced for the world to see. David walked into the gala with calm authority, applause chasing his every step. At the center table, he sat regal and unshaken, a king among pretenders. But his eyes told the real story. This night wasn't about him alone. It was about his family, his community, his ancestors whose whispers filled his silence with power. For Mark and Stephen, this was only the beginning of their downfall. And here on Golden Stories, you already know the storm had only just begun. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. The world had watched Mark Peters and Stephen Clark fall. Their names were forever tied to shame. But for David Kareem, that wasn't enough. Because the truth was clear. For every Mark and Stephen, there were hundreds more hidden behind uniforms, desks, and titles. David did not want just revenge. He wanted reform. In the weeks that followed, David moved in silence. He didn't waste his time mocking his enemies. He built, behind closed doors, he called meetings with lawmakers, CEOs, and global leaders. His vision was clear. New policies, accountability standards, diversity reforms, and training programs designed to tear down bias brick by brick. And while others hesitated, David invested. His billions flowed into schools, scholarships, and leadership programs for young people who had been told they didn't belong. The world had seen his humiliation. Now, they would witness his power. For Mark Peters and Stephen Clark, the nightmare only deepened. Everywhere they went, David's name haunted them. Job applications rejected, headlines replayed, strangers pointed, whispering, "Those are the guards who tried to stop him." But the cruelest cut? Their own children now benefited from David's programs, scholarships stamped with his name, classes funded by his foundation. The very man they tried to belittle was now shaping their children's future, and they could do nothing but watch. David Kareem had turned humiliation into history. Mark and Stephen became a warning. David became a legend, and this was only the beginning of his legacy. Here on Golden Stories, we remind you, true revenge isn't about destroying enemies. It's about building a future where their hate holds no power. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories that leave you breathless.